Let me ask you the big question of advice.
Okay.
What advice would you give to young people today that or maybe high school, college, thinking about career, thinking about life they can be proud of?
So the first thing that I would say is that life is longer than you think it is. Even though I understand the impulse to be in a rush, uh, you will have many unfoldings, more even than people of my generation did.
Unfoldings. That's such a funny word. That's a
It's
beautiful
just,
word.
but it
Unfolding.
feels that way. It's like
Yeah.
different aspects of your life will come, will show you different possibilities that you don't imagine at the moment. Um, and and I think the second thing that I would say is, um, I know that this is a very old fashioned, but I would say don't, if to the extent that you can read, don't just, and not just on social media, read books. Learn things that will give you a broader context for your life than just today or yesterday, or the day before. And I suppose the other thing that I would say is that to the extent that you can, try to develop your own internal metric of both what matters and what is good, because you will be exposed to more voices than any generation in history telling you that that's good or this is good. They're called influencers, but what they are is voices telling you what you should think and what you should believe. And so have some internal space where you'll be able to say, for example, I know this person is doing that and it looks great, but that's not me.
You have a community of people that speak to you with a lot of passion. And do you still have that voice in the privacy of your own mind that you're able to ignore, like for a moment, just be with yourself and
Absolutely.
think what is right?
Absolutely. And I think it's partly because I grew up without that. I mean, I grew up with a lot of space in my life. And so I had chance to develop that voice. That's why I think it's harder for kids today than it was for me. I mean, I grew up when there were 3 channels. There was 3, 6, and 10. There was ABC, CBS, and NBC, and that was it. And you spent your evenings, playing board games or reading or whatever. And there was a lot of space. And we played football in the street. And you went on your bike in the morning, and nobody worried about you. And you came home at night, and everybody assumed you were fine. And so I really feel, and also I went into a religious tradition where I feel like I have the opportunity to judge myself by bigger metrics. And it's still hard. I don't want to, it's not like, oh, I wear impenetrable armor. It's still hard. So how much harder for kids today when they don't have that?
You mentioned books. Is there Bertrand Russell and Denial of Death by Ernest Becker? Is there books that pop into mind that had an impact on you?
My favorite novel is Middlemarch. Middlemarch. I remember I was listening to a podcast. I was listening to one of your podcasts where you said where your guest said the 2 greatest novels of the 19th century were Brothers Karamazov and what was the other one he mentioned? I don't remember.
Dostoevsky as well, or no?
I think
was it both Dostoevsky?
I might have been. I don't remember. Maybe but anyway. But I would say Middlemarch is up there. Middlemarch presents an entire world, and it's written by a woman, Mary Ann Evans, who took the pen name George Eliot, who you feel. Virginia Woolf said it's the only English novel written for grown-ups. You feel the genius in her sentences, like the pressure of her intellect in her sentences. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. I love it.
Pressure of her intellect.
Yeah, you really do. I love Saul Bellow, especially Herzog, but it's a very different kind of thinking person's novel. I read a lot of mysteries and a lot of other kinds of fiction and literature, but in terms of the books that most. You mentioned one of them, which is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And I also really, really love Heschel's The Sabbath. I think it's a beautiful book. It's a very short book, just as Frankl's book is.
What do you take from the Man's Search for Meaning? What do you take of a human being in the worst conditions being able to um, non-dramatically
Yeah.
find little joys, find beauty in
It's what I said before about Judaism's advice to younger people, is that it matters. If you believe that something matters, you have enormous resilience. It's meaninglessness that is the greatest threat to a decent life. When people are like deeply depressed, whether it is chemical depression or what they feel like is this is all meaningless.
yeah.
And meaning, now obviously chemical depression calls in part for chemical means, but meaning is is the great antidote. We can talk about what kind of meaning. I mean, there are kinds of meanings that are awful, but meaning is the great antidote to a sense that life is just nihilistic and purposeless, and to that destructiveness that I think is too common.
Yeah, so maybe the heroic action in Nazi Germany, in the Holocaust, in the camps, is the even not the action, but just the realization that every life matters.
So here's this really wonderful story that Hugo Grin, who was a rabbi in England, died, I don't know, like 15, 20 years ago, used to tell. He grew up in Auschwitz. He was a child there, and he was with his father, and it was Hanukkah. And you're supposed to light the candles. And his father took the margarine ration and used it as the oil to light the Hanukkah candles. And Hugo was scandalized, and he said, "That's our food." And his father said, "What we have learned, my son, is you can live for 3 weeks without food. You can live for 3 days without water, but you can't live for 3 minutes without hope."